The accusations made in 3 Texas courtrooms were staggering. Witness after witness described how a notorious drug cartel pumped money into Mexican electoral campaigns and paid off individual politicians and policemen in the border state of Coahuila to look the other way as hundreds of people were massacred or forcibly disappeared. The Texas court testimonies, gathered in a report released this week by the Human Rights Clinic at the University of Texas School of Law and Fray Juan de Larios Diocesan Human Rights Center in Coahuila, give one of the most complete accounts so far of how organized crime has attempted to capture the institutions of democracy in Mexico's regions. The report prompted outrage among activists who have worked with victims of violence. But the accusations were met with sharp denials from Mexican politicians and a pointed lack of interest from judicial officials. The Mexican public, meanwhile, mostly shrugged, even as the country endures its most violent year on record and the crackdown on organized crime seems unlikely to end anytime soon. The lack of action from government is to be expected, said Jorge Cawis, a security analyst in the city of Monterrey. But the lack of outrage by Mexicans is just disheartening. We've become numb to excessive violence. There's no leadership in government or in the streets, and Mexican media is practically useless for holding power accountable. Allegations that Mexican politicians have acted in cahoots with drugs cartels have been common for decades, though such accusations have seldom resulted in thorough investigations, let alone criminal convictions. Even after sworn testimony in U.S. courts has described corruption, Mexican officials appear unwilling to act. For Mexicans, it's always sad to hear that the real investigations against crime and corruption in Mexico have to be done elsewhere in order for them to actually mean something or attain a result, said Esteban Alaides, editor of the magazine Nexos. Mexico's militarized crackdown on drug cartels over the past decade has cost more than 200,000 lives and left more than 30,000 missing. But by its own terms, it has been a failure. 2017 is shaping up to be the country's the most violent year on record. Los Zetas, a band of elite SOLRS who became cartel enforcers and then established their own criminal empire, have been weakened in recent years after their senior leaders were kidnapped or killed and the group split into rival factions. But from 2006 to 2014 the group terrorized swaths of northeastern Mexico. In Coahuila, an arid state butting up against Texas, Los Zetas killed hundreds of people and burned their boss before scattering the ashes in the desert. The cartel carried out a string of massacres, including a 2011 rampage through the town of Allende which left about 300 dead. They also spent millions on bribery, according to testimony gathered in this week's report and given in separate criminal trials between 2013 and 2016. The Zetas paid bribes and integrated police officers into their hierarchy to ensure the cartel would be able to continue their illicit operations without resistance, it said. Witnesses described a level of Zeta control which extended to city police chiefs, state and federal prosecutors, state prisons, sectors of the federal police and the Mexican army, and state politicians. The report also quoted explosive accusations made in U.S. courts that Los Zetas paid off a pair of Coahuila state governors and pumped millions into state elections elsewhere in the country. Some observers urged caution, saying witness statements alone, especially from those cooperating the authorities, were not enough to establish guilt. These guys clearly have a motive to blame others, to incriminate others. Whatever they're saying should be read within this context, said Alejandro Hope, a security analyst. It's hard to believe that in the Zetas' peak years in Coahuila State, 2010, 2011, 2012, they had no connections with the state apparatus in Coahuila, he added. Did it go to the top? I'm not sure. Javier Garza, former editor of the Coahuila newspaper El Siglo de Torreon, said that such questions would probably go unanswered by Mexican authorities. These statements were told under oath, so supposedly what they're saying is true, but it's never been corroborated because nobody in Mexico investigated.